What's up, everybody? I'm with Mateo Cristiani. Mateo, how's it going?
It's going good. How you doing?
Awesome, man. We're at the 2017 IJA Fest. We did some juggling. It's been fun. Tell me, how'd you get into performing?
I was the sixth generation of my family to be in variety circus entertainment. My family started in 1840.
Wow.
So it was, it was a choice. My parents still gave me a choice, but then at the same time, it was hard to
Unbelievable.
buck,
Yeah.
5 previous generations of
What did you do?
precedent.
What did you start out with?
What did I do as a performer?
Yeah, what'd you do in the circus?
I was a trampolinist. So my father and his brother had done the gymnastic trampoline act. Before that, my family were bareback riders. They were acrobats on horseback. But when my dad was a teenager, my grandfather sold the last of their horses because my dad and his brother had been messing around on the trampoline that they owned and had gotten really good at it. So that became their main act, so to speak. So when I was a kid, my dad and my uncle were performing all over the world with this act. And so I started learning when I was about 2.5.
Wow.
On the trampoline, and first time I performed. I performed in the act when I was 3, probably the first time, but I was kind of a novelty. I came out, I looked cute, and then when I was 5, I did a routine. Was the first time I ever did anything, but not until I was about 13 or 14 was I an integral part of the performance. My brother was quite a bit younger than me. He was 7.5 years younger than me. So once he got to about 10 years old and he was able to do some pretty good gymnastic tricks, we started performing together on the trampoline. And I would catch him on my shoulders. He would do different gymnastic tricks on the trampoline in front of me, and I would step underneath him and catch him on my shoulders. And that was the main focus of our act.
Yeah.
So it was pretty
Well, how much hours of practicing did you do?
You know, it's funny. I think other disciplines, like juggling, for instance, you'll see people practicing for hours upon hours, whereas with what we were doing, it was pretty high impact, so we couldn't really practice a lot because it would take a lot out of you. So when we were younger, we practiced 3 or 4 times a week. And then as we got older, less and less, as we got better at what we were doing, practice would be kind of a once a week or once every couple of weeks.
Or a warm-up for a show?
Or warm-up. Warm-up really was more just stretching and get my brother on my shoulders, warm up my shoulders a little bit. But as we got older, you learned to conserve your energy because we really would get pretty beat up. It was, it was more like a football career. You knew by the time you were going to hit 30 that you were on the downside of it, because we would rack up quite a few injuries. So we would conserve practice time because for us, practice was actually harder than performing because you didn't have the same adrenaline pump. When we would perform, you would be full of adrenaline in front of a crowd, so you wouldn't hurt, you wouldn't feel the pain of impact as much.
I heard some crazy stories where sometimes that's happened and you realize, I'm bleeding, my arm's about to fall off, but no problem.
All the time.
Keep going.
You'd get out and be like, oh wow, that's much worse than I thought it was.
And then after, it's the second day where you're like, oh man, now it hurts.
Absolutely. So so we didn't practice a lot. Probably the last 3 years that we worked, we didn't ever practice, to be honest with you, because we were performing at a pretty frequent clip. So we would do it. We only practice at that point to clean up something that maybe had gone wrong. We'd get a bad habit, something form wasn't correct, so we'd go back and practice to fix it. And so by the end of our career, that's what practice had become. It had become a corrective.
Okay, cool, man. So any wild stories while you're in the circus? You probably have some.
So many.
A few.
My brother had a tendency at times when he would get tired, his form would get bad sometimes, and he would go up about 18 feet over my head and come down. So when his form wasn't as good, his foot placement would be wrong, so he had a tendency to rip my shirts off. So I would have these nice tuxedo shirts and these big crowds, and my brother would have this way to do it. It was like a magic trick. I still don't understand how he would do it. He would land and his foot would twist a little bit, and he would catch the shoulder of my shirt and yank half my shirt off. So
right in front of everybody.
Yeah, it was
in
amazing.
the show.
He would yank it through. Sometimes I'd have a vest on. A lot of time we had kind of like a vest and suit themed costume, and somehow he'd rip it through the sleeve of my vest, and I'd have no shirt on.
And you were like right in the center stage of the circus, and everyone saw you?
Or he had a tendency because the way I would catch him on my shoulders, he'd slide down my biceps into my shoulders, so I would get a callus there, from months of doing it. And when we wouldn't perform for a month or two, the callus would go away.
Were you flipping them? Like, how did the shirt
it was a gymnastic trampoline like they use in the Olympics, so it gives you quite a bit of lift. But I would too. We would have a tempo of we would count when we were getting ready to do a trick, a 3 count. So on one I wouldn't give him any assistance on 2. I would use what they would call a double bounce, a rebound effect on the trampoline. Whereas he's coming down, I would press.
Oh, I used to do that at a time
yeah.
with my friends when we were
Yeah,
young.
like if you've ever
I want to go higher.
Yeah.
Boom.
If you've ever been on any trampoline, you know this happens. Usually it ends up with somebody on the floor outside. It's a kid crying. But we did it in a controlled way, so I could give him a boost of about 6, 7, 8 feet of height by doing that. So on the second jump, I would give him a little bit, and then on the third, I would come off the trampoline bed about 1.5 feet and come down and launch.
How high were you going?
Me, I would only go about maybe 2 feet off of the trampoline as I would do this, and I would bring all my weight down and impact him, and he'd go up about 18, 19 feet. Depending
19
on
feet?
Give or take. But the thing with gymnastic tricks, and most things, even if you're doing floor gymnastics, is it's a little bit counterintuitive. The higher you do something, the easier it is.
Right, yeah, more time
to do it. Yeah, so for my brother, especially since when he was doing a gymnastic trick to the trampoline, is one height, but to do to my shoulders, he had, generously 5'9", so he had 5'9" less space to do his trick because he had to land on my shoulders, or at least 5 feet because he would get to my shoulders. And so you'd have to go that much higher to finish the rotation of a trick. He did, double forward half twist. He did triple full twisting somersault, quadruple full twisting somersault.
Quadruple.
So yeah, my dad, my uncle were really even much better than we were in a lot of ways. They, my uncle did 6 full twists to the trampoline.
Do you have video of this, or this?
Yeah. My cousin Marco.
If it's on YouTube, are they able to find it on YouTube?
Yeah.
What would they say? What do you want to drop it?
Go ahead. YouTube.com/Mateo Cristiani 1. The number 1 would bring you right.
How do you
to
spell Mateo Cristiani?
So Mateo, and then Cristiani, and then the number 1. Or if you just search Cristiani Family, Cristiani Circus, Trampoline, any of those combinations will usually bring you to some of our stuff. And you see some of my dad and my uncle who really were elite. There was like 3 or 4 families, strange enough, all Italian, because there was a lot of Italian acrobats. It was kind of a tradition. In the 70s and into the 80s, it all did trampoline acts, and the Canestrellis were probably the first of them. They were fantastic. And then my father and my uncle were a little bit younger and kind of grew up watching them. And came after them. There was also a family called the Fonosaris, and those 3 families all did trampoline acts. There were other ones, but those were like the 3 that were really doing tricks to each other's shoulders.
And also, the families also own the circuses too. That was a big deal. Where in Mexico they have different families, and they would travel, and the circus owned, the last name would be the name of that circus.
Most circuses were family owned for a long time. I mean, not as much now, although they still exist. In Europe, there's still a lot of family owned circuses. But traditionally, that's what they were. A lot of times it was kind of a natural progression, evolution of circus families, because they were big families anyway. They had a lot of kids. And then as their kids got a little bit older and got married and had their own kids, suddenly you'd have this gigantic troupe. And they weren't a viable product for another circus to hire anymore because they were big. So they would end up opening up their own circuses. That's how a lot of family circuses. And even today that happens. You'll still see that there's a lot of families that do shows on big fairs, national, state fairs, conventions, that are family shows because they also can't find work for such a large group.
Well, check this out. I mean, I live in Orlando, Florida, and I always go down and visit my parents, and they write down Sarasota. What's it like with the Sarasota circus and all these circuses? How did you get involved with all these circuses?
Well, Sarasota is like the circus capital of the country in a lot of ways. There's some other enclaves in the country, but Sarasota was because Ringling Brothers settled their winter quarters there in the early 30s. John Ringling moved the winter quarters of the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus down there, and so you would have all these different acts that they were bringing from Europe and other places.
And that was their base, yeah.
Yeah, and they'd end up there for the winter, and it was a beautiful place. It was Florida, so and a lot of these people had come from climates where in the wintertime
super cold.
You had to find some place indoors to be able to.
In Russia, so cold.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the vodka is good.
Florida, you didn't have to do that. There was no excuse. You had sunshine all year round. So my family did that the same way. They came from Italy in 1934 to work for Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey, and they settled into Sarasota, and it was a big family, so they all started buying houses there, and that happened with a lot of circus families. So even today in Sarasota, there's dozens and dozens of circus families that still live there.
Okay.
And so because of that, there's a lot of circus history there. There's also John Ringling's home that he left to the States, so there's a huge museum of circus history there, and John Ringling's house.
How do you, I'm sorry, keep going.
Sure, but no.
I wanted, just since you're talking about Ringling, how do you feel about Ringling closing?
I mean, it's sad. It's always something.
How many years was that?
146 years, I think. 146. They said.
146 years.
Yeah, I mean they changed owners only a couple of times. Really, so that's an impressive run for any kind of organization of any industry. So in that sense, it's sad to see that it ends. But I mean, it's not the end of Circus. Circus is an ever-evolving product. For somebody like me, that's from what you would call old school circus, the industry that I grew up in is not really around anymore. It's a much different industry. It's changed quite a bit, which isn't a bad thing. There's a lot of things that need to evolve about it. I came from something that was very family tradition oriented, and it was passed down from one generation to the other. Now you have a much newer generation of people that have gotten interested in circus via circus schools, or just watching it on YouTube videos. That's a whole new segment of circus performers that when I was a kid was not as there was always performers that had just gotten interested because they saw it somewhere and got into it via their interest. But now it's a much easier thing to get into because of the internet and YouTube, and there's a lot more circus schools. Before, circus schools were mostly a state-run thing that you found in a lot of countries that had state sponsored arts programs, like the Soviet Union had huge state circus schools. You have that in China still.
Circus Kiev, you have all these circuses.
Yeah, exactly. So before, that's what circus schools were. Now you have them, of course, popping up all over the place. There's a couple in Sarasota, Florida. There's some in New York.
So do you think because of the closing, it's also a new beginning for new circuses, opportunity?
It's an opportunity. I mean, there's no guarantee of what they'll do with that. Ringling Brothers leaves a hole that I don't know who else is going to fill right now, because they're working major arenas with a large spectacle show. So you need somebody that's going to fill that kind of gap. Circus nowadays in the United States is kind of Ringling and then a bunch of smaller shows. Some of them high quality, some of them not so high quality, which is kind of how every business and industry is.
Well,
so
I want to say
who will step up.
Thank you for taking my mom and my dad to see the Circus. Absolutely. That was awesome.
Yeah, Circus Sarasota is a great organization. It's a small organization.
Nick Willenda, who was there.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to be up in Big Apple in the new version of Big Apple Circus, another show that closed down and now is reopened under new ownership. So hopefully that works out well.
What is performing giving back to you? What's the gift that's giving back to you?
I mean, obviously, the most tangible thing is the ability to travel. Travel is expensive. A lot of people don't get to do it in their lifetime extensively, and I got to do quite a bit of it. Would still like to do more. And so that was the most tangible thing, is I got to travel, meet other people, cultures, try their foods, learn about their traditions.
But you travel with your wife, though. She's performing.
I do sometimes. My wife travels mostly on her own. She'll fly out for a couple days, come back. So I don't travel in the same way that I used to when I was a performer.
Those who don't know, his wife is one of the best jugglers in the world.
Yeah,
Gena Schwartzman. Absolutely. She's amazing.
She is.
Check her out.
You should go check her out.
I checked her out today, man, a little bit.
She's pretty good. Well, I check her out quite a bit.
We juggled together. We juggled just a little bit.
So yeah, as far as the best gift, I think the best gift that circus performing gave to me was an interest in variety and everything in life. I was always interested because I was around a really amazing variety of personalities and talents. It gave me an interest in variety in everything from literature to art to food.
Right.
I spent a lot of my childhood around people from dozens of countries at one time. We had circuses where there was people from South America and from Eastern Europe and from...
It's so awesome, isn't it?
It was fantastic, and I more than anything in the world today, I cherish my appreciation for variety and for
culture,
different cultures, because there's so much to learn from them. I think is probably the biggest gift that you get from any kind of travel or interaction with different people is that.
I always say, like, when I go to a country, I've been to like 25 countries on tour when I was traveling, and the past couple years, and the most amazing thing was just being with the locals. Let them experience, try their food, learn a little bit of the language. And just, try it. You might say, oh, well, I only do this in the States. Nope, no more. You are there and you do whatever maybe they do. And I had sticky tofu in Taiwan. I had the steam and I had the fried, but I gotta say, it was good. The guys who won here, the IJA, they were Taiwanese Diablo acts, and they were Taiwanese. And I went to them, I said, stinky tofu. And they go, yeah. And that's how we connected. We didn't know English. He didn't know the English so well, but they knew that stinky tofu.
And that's the best thing.
And that's the best thing.
Yeah. It's not only,
connecting
it's almost
as
dual,
a person to a person.
Yeah. It's almost a dual benefits that you get to experience the things that you have in common, and the things that you don't are almost as interesting.
Yeah. Learn something
because
new.
a lot of things that you don't have in common become new interests for you. So you both get the common bond of all the things that people international, all over the world want and need and love, and then you find all these things that you had no idea existed.
Do you travel with your wife and your son a lot as
Sometimes,
well when you guys visit the cultures?
Not as much. I think in the future I'd like to. There's a change in the industry is for variety performers and circus performers. You used to be able to travel with your family a lot more. Now it's a little bit harder. The places don't want to offer transportation for your spouse and your kids as much. So I don't get to travel as much. I wish that was more.
But what if you be a part of the show with the Gena Schwartzman? She juggles.
I'll be in the sideline there.
That's what I'm saying. Well, that's how then you can travel.
I am one of the best juggling assistants in the world.
There you have it.
I'm telling people that.
You rock. Gena, you rock too. You're an amazing juggler. Just want to put that on video. So tell me this. What advice would you give to someone? Last thing, what advice would you give someone that wants to get into performing?
That's always tough. Like most things that you have a passion for in the arts, you're probably not going to get rich doing it. A handful of people do. So that can never be your main goal. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's always good to have a goal of making a living, but that can't be your main goal when you're an artist, because it's kind of fleeting. It's a lot of combination of hard work and luck and being in the right place at the right time. So you can't take anybody's advice that you should do something because this is what's going to be best for you financially or in the long term of your life. Do what you want to do at that point in your life. Whatever you have a passion for makes you feel like you're contributing to the world. Do that for right then. It might change later on in your life. You might be doing something.
That makes so much sense, because if you want, like, oh, I need to practice for this one show. If I don't get in this show, this big Du Soleil, or if you want to go and do a big show on a circus, if you're like, oh, all I need to do is this show, but you're not focusing on now. Focus on now.
And it's hard. You have to balance those two things.
Focus on what's now. Be in the moment. Absolutely. I had a good talk with Gabriel. He's a Cirque du Soleil performer, and we hanged out last night, had a great time, and he was amazing. He's a juggler, but we talked about focusing now. Not what's going on, be now. And we did a show last night. You should have saw it. It was crazy. I dropped the balls, and it was the perfect drop in the world. I was at a juggling festival, and I said, let me just do something that maybe they don't expect. They expected me to juggle.
This was perfect.
We took a left turn. Everyone thought, right turn.
Yeah, that
just be in the moment. Have fun.
That would be probably the best advice I can give you, is that you will, especially.
You gotta watch the video. I have to show you that.
Especially as an entertainer. Especially as an entertainer, you're gonna have mostly
good times.
You're gonna have a really good mix of success and failure.
Right.
You're gonna have jobs that you got that you wanted, and a bunch of jobs that you didn't get that you wanted, and in the moment, it feels like when you don't get what you want, that it's a huge problem. It's a huge disappointment. Somebody that finished their performing career, that everything that went wrong and went right for me ended up bringing me to where I am now. And there's so many things that I have now that I wouldn't want to trade for anything. So your successes and your failures become equally important in that way. I love my family, my wife. I met her randomly on a circus that I was performing in. Now I'm happily married and I have a beautiful son. There was a lot of jobs that I didn't get that brought me to that point. There was a lot of contracts that didn't work out that brought me to the point where I met my wife and did all these things. So your life is going to be like that, especially for anybody's life, but especially for entertainers, because you're constantly hustling, you're constantly trying to work at the right place, be seen by the right people, and in the end, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to work in the right places.
You never know what's going to happen. It could be a left turn, but that's what's meant. That's what it's for.
Yeah, you'll see it at the end. Unfortunately, you'll see it afterwards much more clearly than when you're in it. But I promise you, that's the truth of it, is that
stay in the moment and just keep doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, they bring you where you end up needing to be, one way or the other. So that's probably the best advice I have.
Awesome. Couldn't say it even better. Mateo, check him out. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.